Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to be here with you in the Gulf Traffic Conference for 2017. It's a promising topic today. The panel is going to be on ways to enhance multimodal transportation with smart solutions while managing risk. So it's a very complicated topic. It has multimodal, it has smart solutions, it has managing risk. Wow, very challenging for the speakers. We've got very prominent speakers. We've got Chris Free from the UAE Managing Director Uber. Chris graduated from University of Manchester in 2007, and he went to spend the first 4 years of his career with the strategy practice in London, in Accenture. Oh, sorry. And Chris is currently having an awesome task by being the general manager of Uber in the UAE, I think, because UAE is one of the most prominent countries which is trying to introduce Uber in a new way, with regulations, with proper government involvement, and not just allowing Uber to work. We've got, of course, our other panelists, Nabil El-Zakka, CEO of Surface Mobility Consultants. I should have known you, Nabil, because I know you from a long time, but sorry, we haven't met for such a long time. So Nabil is the Managing Director of UAE Operations for Transport Group, a niche consulting specializing in transportation. I guess that Nabil has got so much behind his career, and now he's having his own business and his own transport group, which is will show through the panel discussion how this niche consultancy specializing in transportation can contribute to our discussion as well. We've got Al. He's an ITS manager at Parsons. Al has got a tremendous amount of years of experience, 31 years of experience. Probably like myself, but I look younger, of course. So I'm sorry, Al. I'm the session chairman, so I've got to look younger than you a little bit, so don't worry. Anyway, Al is experiences in planning, designing, and construction of projects. He's done lots of projects worth of 3 billion in civil and transportation infrastructure. He's got so much behind him in ITS, in intelligent transport systems, traffic system management, and environmental impact assessment. He has a wide experience. Simon is not here, is he?
Stage in his seat?
Simon is here?
No, he's not here, so I thought Vincent could join the panel.
Okay, sure. Can I ask you, you're not Simon, are you? You're not Simon. So can I ask you please to present yourself, because I don't have sufficient information on you. That would be great.
My name is Vincent Bourquin. I am professor in the University of Applied Sciences in Western Switzerland, and I've been busy in the development in the engineering side of new transport systems. I've shown you Swiss Metro. I was busy on truck development, electrical truck, hybrid truck. Now we are more into formula cars in my divisions, and I jump up in the level of transportations in order to make the connections between transportation planner and engineers in order to develop and find new solutions. So this is really my research activities in the field of transport. And so I covered as many levels as possible, not as a specialist, but more as a generalist and coordinator.
Thank you very much, Professor. That makes our panel very comprehensive, not even in the sciences that we have, but also in the breadth of experience. We've got Nabil from the consultancy side. We've got Chris from operations side. We've got the professor from the academic side. And we've got Al from the infrastructure and project management side. So this will bring a huge spectrum to our discussion. Unfortunately, I have to stand, although I have back pain, but I will stand, no problem. Anyway, I've got a few questions to pose. I will start with the first question. ITS have been for years with us. We all know what's intelligent transport system. And then we have something new called smart transport. And we have another terminology called innovative transport. What is the difference really? Is ITS different than smart transport? Is it different than innovative transport? And where are we heading? I would like the professor to start with this, if you don't mind.
I think ITS was really the notion of digitalization applied to transport. So to put what data can we get from transportations in order to make smarter decisions, because the development of transportation infrastructure has always a lot of stories about failures or things that we did not expect to go this way, or and so on. So ITS was more here. Smart is really to make the best possible decisions, and innovative is really to break out barriers which are just existing because we're used to see things in a certain way, because when we were born it was like this, and it doesn't mean that it's the good solutions today. So we really need to focus on the problem of today in order to define new solutions. And these new solutions are more difficult than before to define. When the first car was done, some guys in the garage has made it, and after he didn't ask anybody. Now to find the solutions, you need to put around the table a lot of different peoples, because there is a lot of issues that you need to consider at the same time.
You want to comment, Nabil?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to add, ITS was a means of collecting information and disseminating massive amounts of information to massive amounts of people. I think what we're trying to experience at the moment is this transition between that and being able to provide bespoke, targeted information to people. Collecting data from multiple sources, being able to analyze that, being able to give that information to the people who actually need it. An example, if I'm traveling on the road network, I want to know exactly what's happening in front of me. I don't really want to know when the next bus is traveling. Do you get me? So it's providing targeted information to people that need it.
Okay. This is very important to set the scene. So basically, from what I understand from the panel discussion, is that really we are not forgetting about the intelligent transport system. We are targeting the future to be intelligent transport systems, to be smart transportation, and to be innovative transportation. So these are different terminologies that complement each other, rather than they compete, or rather than they are synonymous. They are not synonymous, they are not competing, but they are complementing. So really what we want to achieve towards the future is a transport system that is intelligent, that is smart, that is innovative, and each one of these words carries a different meaning. My other question, please, is for Al. Is in the topic we have multimodality. What we want to really know is how can we achieve and aspire for multimodality when we want commuters to experience seamless trips, i.e. how can we achieve seamless transportation with several modes? So basically the question is that we talk about multimodality, but multimodality means that I can take from A to B two types of modes, the metro and the bus, for example. Now each one has got its own characteristics. And at the same time, we want to achieve something called seamless transport. Are we able to have the same customer experience and customer feeling with these different modes?
Well, my first approach to this would be that it's not necessarily a technological solution at the first step. I view that the seamless or multimodal solutions that our customers and the public is looking for is really based fundamentally in how we plan and design our systems. And we still have a long way to go in improving that overall first step. Too many times, and I'll bring you a North American perspective, that we still see road solutions. We see adding capacity as our first and only and simplest solution to what we do. And a number of organizations, whether it be the Federal Highway Administration or states or other municipalities, have taken on the challenge of having a multimodal planning and design focus. But those are still just words in many cases. The second step then becomes the technology and the credibility. As Nabil alluded to about intelligent transportation systems, we build in through planning and design the intelligence, and ultimately capstone all that with a smart transportation solution that's customized to multiple users, multiple customers, and agencies as a whole. I'm a planner by heart, and I see most of my customers, most of my clients, still want to build their way out of a congestion or mobility solution. And that building their way out of that problem is 9 times out of 10 adding more roadway capacity. They're adding another lane. They're adding a right turn lane, or they're adding miles and miles, kilometers and kilometers, of a roadway network. And in turn, our customers, the people who we serve as planners and designers, construction people, we fall miserably short by creating a multimodal system because we see it one-dimensionally.
Okay. Any other comments from the panel? Please, Chris.
Sure. Yeah, the only thing I might add is I think from an Uber's point of view, this is really where we want to get to.
Okay.
So we want to get to a world where someone is using an Uber to then to complement the use of public transit that exists today. So how can we serve as a first, last mile solution to complement the existing infrastructure that's built? And I think where we're in newer and newer cities that are less mature in terms of the transport infrastructure that exists today, there's a real opportunity to start working together from an early stage to say, well, how can we get people living in a transport desert to the closest metro station rather than have to build that metro station all the way out to that transport desert? So for us, it's very much trying to get the two modes complementary. How you do that, whether that's one application, two applications, the process of doing that is a little easier, I think, but it's getting people's mind shift to change. People consider giving up their cars. People consider using other forms of transportation rather than necessarily owning a car and putting it in the garage for 95% of the time.
You achieve a level of seamless a seamless journey, whether you use 1, 2, or 3 modes of transport. When you've given the right kind of information to people, when they know that I can walk up the road, I can get my bus, it arrives at 12:25, I'll get to the metro station, the next metro is at 12:45, and then I know that the next bus that will take me to work, for instance, or to my destination is at 1:30. Being able to time my trip, time my journey accurately, I'll be a happy customer, and that's seamless.
Okay, this is interesting. I will challenge not what you've said, but I just want to challenge, not to differ, but to challenge a little bit. So seamless, from what you have described now, Nabil, is basically seamless in terms of information. How about my own feeling as a passenger? If I ride the bus, for example, I've got the same information, I've got the same fare policy, but the seating comfort is different in the bus than the seating comfort in the metro, for example. Or if I have to stand in the bus, but I can sit in the metro. Isn't that the comfort and convenience and the aesthetics is also part of the seamless? That's one thing I would like to answer, but keep that, because also I have got another one for Chris. Chris, there is another challenging question that you have jumped into it, which is great, and that is, you portray Uber and Careem, I'm not against that at all, that it has to go for the last and the first mile to integrate the trips. But isn't also Uber and Careem trying to replace public transport, full trip from door to door? Isn't Uber and Careem trying to give me that seamless journey, which I'm challenging Nabil about it, by providing only one mode that comes to my door and that drives me directly to there, and that's probably will be the Uber taxi or the Uber vehicle. So really, where are you? Are you wanting, is the role of Uber and Careem more into that or more into? I think that you jump. Okay, go ahead, please,
sure.
and then maybe.
So I think one of the things that we've talked about over the last couple of years is being able to give riders a choice, or giving people in the city a choice. So if they're particularly price sensitive and they want to use Uber to get to the closest metro and then take that metro downtown, that's one option. If they're less price sensitive, they want to use Uber to take it from door to door, that's another option. I think where we see a good opportunity is maybe putting two people in the same car who are going from door to door, and then that takes at least one or two cars off the road. So then you actually start to see a significant impact in the number of cars that are on the road, and people are actually starting to carpool. And if you can make something like carpooling affordable and easy, which I think has always been a challenge, then you start to see a significant difference. So if we can start to offer people a choice, and whether that is to complement public transport, to go all the way by themselves, or to indeed share that ride, we want to be able to offer those different opportunities for different people. But we were having this discussion before, and I don't think there's necessarily a case to say that people are using Uber to substitute public transport. If you look particularly in Dubai, people who use Uber have never used public transport. It's a completely different group of people. So what we're doing here is we're actually saying, well, don't buy a car, just use Uber, because we know we're probably never going to get you onto the metro. Now that's probably different in somewhere like London, because of the price of Uber and the price of public transport is much more closely aligned. But different cities are solving kind of different problems, and each different city has its own unique attributes.
Interesting. Thank you very much. Maybe please.
So it's an interesting question. I think.
Can you please repeat for the audience how you understand the question so that they get their mindset another time?
So there's two ways of looking at what seamless is, right? It's from a transportation perspective, and being able to provide what is perceived to be a seamless. I arrive at my destination when my next mode of transport is coming. I get on that, and then I arrive at my destination. So it's the transition between one mode and another in an almost seamless way is what's perceived to be a seamless trip or a seamless journey from point A to point B. From a customer perspective, from an individual's perspective, when you talk about aesthetics and you talk about seating and you talk about is the metro air conditioned or not, I think it depends on where you come from. In the region that we live in, yes, it is a problem. Not a problem, but it's something that we need to think about. And I think the government organisations are looking at how they can improve the customer experience from using the different modes of transport. They've introduced Gold Class, for instance, in the metro. They've added buses onto popular routes so that people are all sat down and not stood up. In Europe and America, it's less of a problem. People use it regardless. I was in Barcelona just 3 weeks ago, and the hotel that I was staying in was about a 35-minute metro/bus ride away from Fira de Barcelona, which is the exhibition centre. And I could get targeted information. And for me, yes, the morning bus was always congested, and I used to stand to get me to the metro station. But I didn't mind. Sorry, I didn't take an Uber. I could have, but
Yeah.
So yes, I think it depends on the culture that you come from. It depends on where you live. As I said here, it's probably more of a. But I think as. Hello?
Yeah.
I didn't know if my answer was that bad. But I think as people receive more and more information, I think the modal shift, and then it's a cultural shift, and it's the way you perceive it. And then whether you mind whether you stand or you sit.
Yes. So what I can feel from also the answers, which is very beneficial, is that what we call different horses for different courses, different strokes for different folks. So different acceptability of what we call seamless from different cities, from different cultures. Okay, whereby here we really are trying to get to the seamless to the extent that even the aesthetics and the standing of in a bus or a metro should be the same, while in other places this may be economically unjustifiable and it may be acceptable by the passengers there. Is there any comments from the professor or from Al?
I'll just,
Because I don't want to leave this one because I like that one. I will move. Don't
Working?
worry.
not working. Oh, now it's working. My whole thing, and it might not be what you want to hear, but I go back to the idea that from a planning perspective, if we don't support a seamless approach to our design and solutions in terms of solution planning, no amount of aesthetics, no amount of comfort will actually compete with an Uber solution. I mean, you can go that way, but I'm being contrary here. That if I don't have a well-planned system, but I can make an easy choice taking Uber, I'm going to take Uber. And I'm a little bit different than our conversation earlier. But
Yeah.
anyway.
Thank you very much for that as well, because this will lead me to another question later. Please, Professor.
I think you mentioned a very important point because in the development of the transportation systems, the classical way is to put seats and to let people do what they want to do, and but of course we can imagine a lot more than that, and it depends on the culture, it depends on also on the people. In the very beginning of Swiss Metro, we just put seats like in an airplane, and that's it. But now we think that people spend significant time, and but even if they spend 15 minutes in one place, maybe they want something, an experience in this 15 minutes. And so maybe we can make one part of the vehicle for people that like music, and maybe another part where people that want to drink a tea or have some refreshment, and so maybe another place where they have cinemas or whatever. But we can imagine, of course, much more than what we have today.
Thank you. Professor, can you stay with me? I want to ask you a question. There is lots of applications now coming to facilitate the booking, the reservations, the utilization, the access of information to public transport, to Uber, to Careem, to whatever, you know. And how can we apply this in countries which are still developing, which has an enormous amount of still uneducated urban poor? These masses, they may not have access to mobile applications. They may not have even mobiles. Even if they have mobiles, they may not be able to use the software. Now, if you have a city whereby you have this urban poor and you have the other population, which is urban middle income or urban rich, who have access to all that stuff, while the urban poor are the ones that really uses public transport and needs the public transport. How can we compromise that? What do you think? I mean, it's a difficult question. I have been thinking about it myself. I come originally from Egypt, and I feel in Cairo, for example, you have an enormous amount of uneducated people. They may have the mobile to talk to, but are they able to use it to book and to do all of this fancy little things that other people do? And how can we compromise that?
Here again, what is very important is to build together this type of applications, because we are used to so many things we don't even aware of it, and we try always to push something that works in a certain condition, that has been developed in certain conditions with a certain know-how, with a certain experience of life, with a certain vision, and we try to push it everywhere, but it's not the good solutions. We have developed recently in our university a plant to generate electricity in the island of Madagascar, and it was, we of course first did this plant like if it was to be installed in Switzerland, but we understood that it was totally insane. So what we did is just we went to Madagascar, we talked to the people, we understood what they are doing, how they do, what is their philosophy, and then we developed something together that would fit their needs, but that would also fit the way of using it, the way of, and I think this is really the solution that I would recommend, just to go and discuss with the people.
So basically what you are saying is that we can still innovate in the technology to make it even adaptable to the urban poor, even if they are uneducated. And while you're talking, I'm recalling now the Egyptian election some time ago, where where all of the names had different animals or different symbols, because these people, they may relate Muhammad or Ahmad to the symbol rather than they can relate it to the name itself, because we'll not be able to read the name. I think you have a lot of experience in many countries in the world, Chris. What do you think about the usability of your software in the booking with the urban poor, and how do you think about it? And definitely this has been something that you thought about it.
Yeah, and it's a huge problem. Uber's done very well in big kind of urban centers, and India's a good example. So I think India was the first country that really forced us to start to think more locally, and how do we adapt our product to be more local and cater to the local market. And so Uber's experience was based on a seamless, frictionless journey. So you press a button, get a ride, car comes, you arrive at your destination, you get out. And cash was never even a consideration. And then you come to India, where there's dual authentication on a credit card, which is painful, and no one has a credit card anyway. So all of a sudden it was like, right, well, let's explore what we can do with cash, and how can we make cash as seamless as experience as possible. So that's, I think, one example. The next example is in some places in Africa where a mobile network is difficult to come by. It's funny, most people, not most people, but a lot more people than I think we necessarily think do have a smartphone. It's just whether they have a 3G or 4G data connection they can actually use it on. So then we started to think about, okay, fine, they have a phone, how can we how can we enable these potential riders to use the service? And so we now have SMS booking and phone booking. And it's not phone booking in a traditional sense where you call a call center. It's a phone booking that calls a system that basically kind of stores up a request and sends out a request accordingly based on the location. So we're trying to slowly adapt more local solutions to try and understand what can we do with the technology that we've got available to us. But the bigger problem then does become, well, how do you penetrate much further than that? So how do you get then into populations that maybe don't even have a phone? And that is a big challenge, and that's something that I think we'll start to think about in the next couple of years.
In transportation and managing risk. So I remember very well that we always talk about risk in many European countries, and even in Egypt. I witnessed that when the metro staff has striked once in Cairo one day, how Cairo was horrendous. Now, if in a city and started people relying more and more in Uber or in smart bookings, and then the smart bookings failed, for the technology has failed. What are the risk things I would like to know from the infrastructure perspective? How can we deal with such risk, and from your perspective?
Well, the only simple solution would be redundancy in the communications network. I mean, that's whether living in North America, I've gone through a number of power outages, communication failures, and at the end of the day, you're only as strong as your weakest link. And if communications, whether it be fiber, spread spectrum, plain old-fashioned telephone, which I don't know if many people here even know what a telephone is anymore, or an old-fashioned wire telephone. If you don't have redundant systems, we're in trouble. That's as sophisticated an answer as I can come up with. So,
Nabil?
I think it's a very interesting question. I think we are completely reliant on technology, on communication. If you're 10 minutes without a mobile phone, without checking your messages or your email or your WhatsApp, or you feel naked in the better sense of the word. So when that fails, what do you do? And I think redundancy is a big part of it. But I go back again to being able to provide information to people by different means. So one mode fails, but another one is so my mobile phone. I don't have 3G coverage or 4G coverage. Then can I power up my laptop and connect to a hot Wi-Fi network and see? If a booking system, for instance, whether it's Uber or any other booking system, fails, not that fails that often, but if it does fail, then have I got a platform that will give me alternatives? You know, fine, I can't get an Uber, I can't get a taxi, but you know, does my platform provide me with alternatives? So redundancy in the infrastructure itself, but also giving people more options and more means of being able to collect that data, being able to use that. I think that's again a part of a solution.
Is it, Professor, is it economically justifiable to talk about redundancy not only in technology, but redundancy meaning that you as government regulators do not make the market as a monopoly. So always have an alternative. So let's say that Uber is increasing in one country and the taxi industry is decreasing. Now, if that redundancy happens, if the taxi industry has fallen completely apart, you will not find taxis on the street because Uber relies on technology. Technology has been redundant. So really, is it, even if it is sometimes not economically justifiable, is it good to have competing modes and modes that are relying fully on technology and modes that are the classical ones like the normal taxi that you wave to or the normal bus that you wait at the station? Or are we all going into even on-demand buses and all that stuff?
There is a French saying that you don't put all your eggs in the same basket. And so I think
that's an international saying.
so it's really, I think this is really the point. And if you have in one turn, sometimes it's good to have one system, but then you need to apply a lot of control in order to control possible deviations from it. And but I'm also sensitive about the perceptions of the technological risk, and I think this is really something also that we need to mention. When I was working on ships, it was very interesting because ships cost something, and usually it's a big financial elements, organization structure. And we have developed a system that could save fuel. But it was impossible to put the system on the ship, because if you put the system on the ship, the warranty of the ship will fall down. So if there is an accident, it will not be covered by our warranty. So there is a financial risk that comes up. And this is quite interesting. And you see on ships that you, in some areas, you are stick to the years 50s design of hull, just because of this type of system. So risk is something really that you need, well, life is taking risk every day, and so you need to mitigate the risk that you take, but you need to have an eye on it every time.
But basically that maintains that there will always be an important role for governments to play in assessing the transport market and regulating it. And part of that regulation is risk mitigation. So it's not only on the operator side, but it's also still the responsibility of the governments, because at the end of the day, they are responsible for the provision of public service to their citizens, whether through themselves or through the operators. That leads me to another interesting question. I put it in such a way. And by the way, I'm very much fan of Uber. I ride Uber a lot in Cairo. However, I'm a little bit, sometimes I like to understand maybe the philosophical questions. And you stated this in your answer. Chris, it's addressed to you, and all of us will share in this. Do we really want to solve the first and the last mile problem? Or do we want a door-to-door transport system such as Uber? A basic question. And eventually, me, you, and everybody in this room, is he still interested if he has two options? One option comes to his doorstep, takes him to the doorstep of his destination. So no first and no last mile anymore. And the other one, yeah, okay, there is the first mile, there is the main trade, there is the last mile. This is done more efficient, much better service, less cost, and all that stuff. Which one do we really want? How do we envisage the future in this one?
well, the future will be flying cars, so none of this is even relevant anymore.
Okay, that future will be what?
It's flying cars,
Okay.
so none of this is relevant.
Okay.
But let's say in a world where that doesn't happen, the three guys here know far more about this than I do, but I kind of think that we're not.
Chris is biased to the answer
Yeah, I
to
was
this
gonna say.
question.
Let him
but
start, because
I-
this biasness will trigger.
It depends who's listening. I don't think we're going to have to make that choice, because I think something like a service like Uber is never going to be able to move the amount of people that are flooding to urban centers. And so I genuinely think that there's never going to be a world where it's just Uber's taking people around, whether they're autonomous or not, or flying or not. That's just not going to be a thing. If you look at the quantity of people that the metro in Dubai moves, or the tube in London moves, it's far outstrips anything that Uber is ever going to be able to do. So I always think that choice is going to have to exist. And I always think that for people to give up their cars, they're not going to just rely on Uber. Where we've started to see people giving up cars, and millennials in LA, for example, or in San Francisco, they're giving up their cars because there's a good public transit system, and there's Uber and Lyft and various other options, Zipcar or whatever it might be on the weekend. And so you have to have all of those options there for people to use, for them to actually then to be able to make that choice to give up the car. So I don't think you're ever going to get to a world where it's just Uber or the metro. That for me doesn't seem realistic. And equally, I'd like to think you're not going to get to a world where people are just driving cars and not doing anything else.
If you can flip that question and ask it from a would you is it really a choice if taking an Uber from door to door will take me 2.5 hours, because mostly if you want to go from A to B, you're either commuting to work, from work, and normally it's going to be in the rush hour, correct? So are you willing to take an Uber, sit in the car for 2.5 hours, but you know that if you take an Uber to your nearest metro station, and then let's say you're coming to the World Trade Center, you don't have to find anywhere to park. In this case, you're using your own car, but taking an Uber to the metro station, take the metro down, and it takes you 35 minutes. I would normally pick the latter. I wouldn't want to be in a car for 2.5 hours. But once I'm at the metro station, right, I would want to get an e-hailing system, Uber or a taxi or a bus, to continue my journey. So I think I agree with Chris. I don't think it will ever be a question of this or that. You will always have them together. And I think what Chris said in the beginning was e-hailing systems are there to complement the rest of the transit network.
All means your answers were great, guys, and I think that you are right. It will never replace what we call the mass transit systems. And the mass transit system is basically the metro, the tram, and all this stuff. But if we talk a little bit further in depth with that, is systems like Uber and Careem able to replace the bus transport systems? Because the bus transport systems, part of the buses, for example, in Dubai, is the majority is feeder buses. And the buses also goes to the neighborhoods. And the buses are flexible because they move on the road. They don't have a dedicated lane. And we have buses called on-demand buses coming to the scene. And why do we have to talk about Uber as a small car? Why can't Uber be a bus, an Uber bus, an Uber on-demand bus? So, and I'm not saying Uber, e-hail here, because I don't want to give you the logo now yet. So an e-hail bus, which is basically on-demand bus, which is basically a bus that applies the concept of shared mobility, applies the concept of shared economy, i.e. I have a space, and that space is used by several people at the same time in a flexible manner. So
I think it's a viable competitor.
Yeah.
As long as the information is readily available to the users, to the customers.
Okay.
As well as the fact it's affordable.
Mm-hmm.
And it's predictable.
And you think that this is where we are heading to a certain extent? I mean, are we heading now that... I'm going to pose that question very strongly because I wanted to pose it in a strong fashion like that. Do you think that the concept of e-hailing could replace the normal bus services. I'm not talking about mass transit systems. The backbones, which is the metro and the BRTs and all that stuff, are backbones that are irreplaceable because of their capacity and ability to transfer so much passengers.
I don't think it's fully replaceable.
Okay.
You will always have a certain capacity dedicated, just being served by bus.
Okay.
But e-hail, share ride with multiple passengers,
Mm-hmm.
I can see that being a viable
Okay.
option in our future.
Okay. Professor, please.
Yes, I think the problem was always to have a capacity and a price for it. And for example, in Switzerland, it's buses cost a lot, especially in terms of human. I mean, the salary of the driver is really the biggest cost on the bus, and so these buses cannot go everywhere, and because it's not possible. For example, for the track that I've shown you, the idea of using autonomous was just to reduce the cost, to afford the possibility of a public transportation to a place with less cost than a classical bus.
I think you'll find, because you've now gone borderline into mobility as a service and the whole concept behind shared rides, etc. In the future, we're going to see fractionalization introduced, where thousands and thousands of people are going to own hundreds of cars rather than thousands of cars. So you would own a piece of a car, and you're a piece of multiple of cars, which can take you to and from your destination. Will that completely replace buses? Only time will tell. I don't think we can answer that question now and today, and particularly with the introduction of autonomous technology and autonomous vehicles, and then we apply it to shuttle buses and to mass and to fractionalization. I think you'll find that yes, maybe people will be more reliant on that and less reliant on a bus, but I don't think we can really categorically answer that question now.
So we have two answers. One answer was that we will still have buses in certain amounts. Another answer was, I don't know what will happen in the future. It may be like that, maybe like
Sorry, I
that.
didn't mean to contradict you.
No, it's not a contradiction. You are neutral, and he's on one side. I will take the other side, which is that I envisage the future to have what we call Uber buses, or what we call e-hail buses, and there will not be any more buses, which have fixed routes. I envisage this will not prevail for the future. My own view is that we will have buses that are on-demand buses that are operated also by private operators, and as much as Nabil have said, that we are sharing in the ownership of a piece of a car, we will share in the ownership of a piece of a bus. But we can never share in the ownership of a piece of a metro or of a piece of mass transit system by default. And of course, we can discuss this with the audience as well. It may be challenging. Does any one of you guys would like to comment further on this?
The only thing I would say, very briefly, is Turkey. Istanbul is a great example. So Istanbul has a dolmuş, which basically runs on a set route, and for something like Uber to be able to compete like that in terms of the speed, the convenience, the volume is very, very difficult. And so we haven't figured that bit out yet. We haven't figured the Uber bus bit out. We've tried a few things. We've got a service called Commute, which started in China, and then we've tried to do it in a few other places. So we're trying, but it's very difficult because something like that dolmuş example in Turkey, it's been there for ages. People are very used to it. It's run on a set route. It's very hard to compete with something like that. And arguably, why should we? Because it's actually serving a very good purpose. So I think there's a lot of work to be done looking into it, and we definitely don't have an answer to it yet.
Okay. I've been asked to go ahead, and I have so many things, but I will try to address them. how can ITS, we talked at the beginning, and I think you all guys set the scene on ITS and smart and innovative, but it's a classical question, but how can ITS and smart mobility and innovative mobility, each one of them play a role in triggering more public transport usage? So all of them, they do that for sure, and that's a very traditional classical question, but I just want to take from you guys some examples that you think are very state of the art on how can ITS now trigger more public transport usage. One or two examples. How can a smart solution trigger more public transport usage? And how can an innovative solution trigger more public transport usage? Any of these examples from Switzerland or from across your experience?
I work with several really intelligent people here in Dubai, and some of them are here in the audience today. We're working on a project right now that will come up with some predictive analytics as well as dynamic diversion. And part of that dynamic diversion planning will be customized customer services, where they'll actually make a recommendation for you to take public transit. It'll find a parking spot for you. It will tell you when the next metro connection comes or the next bus connection comes. So for me, it's not something in the planning stage. It's going to be reality very shortly, and I'm very excited about it too. So
this will be applied in Dubai?
It'll be applied in Dubai.
Good. Okay, we have the first announcement here.
I'm waiting for our PAs here.
Don't worry.
And again, I mean, it's a very good point. It's providing information. It's encouraging modal shift by providing the right information to the right people. And I'll go back to when as I said, when I was in Barcelona, and I took, I took the metro. I took the bus to the metro, and I took the metro down to the exhibition center. I mean, to me, having that information when I was in my hotel room was a catalyst for me to actually go and use that mode rather than go downstairs and ask the concierge to get me a taxi. So targeted information to targeted people is the key for modal shift. Plus education and awareness and the stigmatism around public transport as being old-fashioned, it's slow, it's unreliable. We need to change. I spent a lot of my time in my career in the UK, and we have a saying in the UK, and I don't know whether you have one in France, but you wait for ages for a bus, and then 5 come at the same time. So that's now changing with proper planning, as Al said. You need to plan for these. Proper planning, proper information, having that information. It's changing. The service is changing. People's perception, it takes time for that change to sink in.
Professor, can you give me an example of Switzerland, for example?
In Switzerland, I think one very interesting aspect is how the Swiss railway operator plays with young people, because they are really connected every minute with the computer. They are inside social network. They want to meet with different people with different level of interest and want to speak about anything. And they play with that, and by offering special fares at a certain time, and really by entering into the world of young people. And this is and former. They also make a lot of. It's easy for a child or for parents with small children to take the train, because you pay almost nothing, and so they are educated to take the train, and after when they are teenagers, they are in a world in which they find themselves. So they have a kind of place where they can play in the public transport.
If I may, it's really interesting. A lot of the conversations that I've had in the past with the regulators has always been around how do we compete with taxi, and rather than looking at how to impose penalties or whatever it might be on Uber, it's actually, well, why don't you flip it and say, well, why doesn't the taxi start to innovate? And pricing has always been a really controversial topic. We have obviously surge pricing, which is a flexible pricing mechanism. So why isn't there a world where trains or buses or whatever they might be start to adopt the same thing? So you say, well, if it's the middle of the day, buses are not that busy, I can pay less to get on the bus and then even cheaper price to get on the train. Well, that makes a ton of sense because it's going to be running anyway, so why don't I start? It's just starting to talk the language that tech companies are starting to introduce to the younger generation that they're now used to, and they now start to expect from services like this. So it'll be interesting to see if other companies or if other services start to kind of play catch up.
Thank you very much. I mean, Nabil has mentioned that basically, and we all know, a good decision is based on the right information. I think that what he's trying to do here is, he mentioned that if we are able to provide that information to the travelers and the commuters, then we are helping them to make a decision, first of all, and to make the right decision also at the right time. But the professor added, and Chris also added, a very important thing is that it is not only providing the information to the commuters, but providing the information per commuter word. So you are not providing the information for Khaled as you are providing it for Ahmed, because Khaled has got a word that is different than Ahmed. So basically that even gives us more depth and more wealth, because by entering that word of Khaled and knowing exactly how he perceives the information and how he will treat it, and you are providing that information in accordance with that, that's even a more challenging thing. And this is very, very challenging. I think I'll just...
Can I just add
yes,
just to that? So the population analytics and population density, being able to understand the patterns of people. I know that I go every day from point A to point B, but I know that. Not many people know that. But once we get population density and information from people, we can start then saying, okay, so this person, not group of people, this person originates from this point and its destination is that point. You can start then designing your transit network and your multimodal transit network around people's choice and people's patterns. So once you've got that information, whether it's Khaled or Ahmed or Tom or Dick or Harry or whoever, you can target that information to those people. And that's something that we'll see here soon.
Yeah. Oh, another announcement. Actually, I don't know all the time. I have a last question. Do I pose it, or do we allow also the audience to
Yes, please allow the
participate?
audience to participate.
I think we had a wealth of discussion, and I would like to hear from you, ladies and gentlemen, please, some comments. That would be great, please. By asking one last question for each one of you. It's the same question, but we need to have hopefully different answers. In a nutshell, how do you view the transport system in cities in the next 10 years? Just give us a vision in few words.
Flying cars.
Flying cars, okay.
Yeah, autonomous cars and flying cars.
Autonomous cars and flying cars.
Sorry, I like your ideas of instant planning of buses or whatever.
On-demand
Yes.
on-demand buses. Okay.
On-demand buses.
So we've got flying cars, autonomous cars, and on-demand buses.
And load balancing. All the routes will be balanced based upon demand and
Yeah,
customer preference.
great. I will conclude by saying something which is more classical of an academic. It's providing transport that is the right product at the right time for the right people with the right price, with the right information, with the right marketing and branding. So what we call the 7 rights. You go and see the 7 rights. If you are able to do them, you have the future of public transport system. With that, we conclude, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your patience with us. Thank you.